Bishaten. That is not a good pose. Bishaten. Or, Bishaten. I'm pretty sure the correct pronunciation is Bishaten. Bishaten. This is my favorite newcomer from Monster Hunter Rise. In my attempts to replicate Bishaten's face, I ultimately made him look kind of silly, but I think that the cuteness factor kind of complements Lego better anyway. And Bishaten, I also made a little fruit for Bishaten. I'm gonna put it on his hand. Before I proceed forward, I want to remind everyone that the instructions to build this model yourself are available on my Patreon under the second tier membership, alongside a parts list and a guide on how to purchase the pieces in order to build this model, and other models. For example, if you're a fan of this other funny flying monkey monster, I've released the instructions for Kechawacha, as you can see here. Kechawacha also looks quite funny and cute. They both kind of look like Muppets in a way. Him and his subspecies are both low in parts, so they're pretty cheap to buy. I will not do a separate video on Kechawacha. Monsters that are not in Monster Hunter Rise or Monster Hunter World will probably not get their own individual videos, but will likely be part of larger videos that will cover full games. So I want to eventually do like a Monster Hunter 4 Lego video, and it'll cover, you know, Celtis, Najarala, Kechawacha, Tetsukabra, Zamtrios, the whole gang, all in one video. If you're a fan of Kechawacha, the instructions for this model are available on my Patreon. He's very cute, very easy to put together, very posable, very playable. Highly recommend that, and he's a lot cheaper than the other models. He really does kind of look kind of funky with his eyes. A little bit scary, a little bit creepy, a little bit muppety. As always, the build present on camera right now is slightly different than the build seen in my instructions. The build in the instructions is always the best version of my design. The only significant difference between the physical model right here that I have in front of you and the one I made in the instructions is the fingers on the tail, because Bishaten has like a hand on his tail. The fingers on the tail are better articulated in the digital model in the instructions. Basically, like, each of these fingers are more posable. Bishaten has only ever had one model made for it, and that's the model in Rise. So my model is based on the Rise model because that's the only model I can base it off of. The color blocking on this monster was pretty easy to replicate. The orange accents on the back, I don't know what you call these, like the feathery decoration things on the back of his hips, and also above his ears, the little like frosted tips that he has, they really help complement everything. Same with his eyes. His eyes also complement the blue. I think that the fruit turned out pretty well. It's a pretty simple build. The subspecies, Blood Orange Bishaten, which also has instructions, has a pine cone instead. Alright, time for a quick size comparison. So this is Bishaten next to a Lego figure to represent a hunter. He's a little bit on the bigger side, especially his face. His head is really big. But Bishaten kind of just has like a big face. And then also, just for comparison's sake, I have a random Bionicle and also a random Gachapon figure, just to give a sense of scale with other action figures. He sort of just comes off as like a big, weird monkey. I feel like Bishaten on his own, because he's not as recognizable as a monster, probably won't be as eye-catching on like a shelf as compared to like Rathalos, which I have a surprise for you all, and I'm actually going to change how I do this from now on. Usually I have these three do the size comparison, right? And I'm still going to have them here, but I also think it would be wise to have our friend Rathalos also be a size comparison. So he's definitely smaller than some of my other models, like Rathalos. Bishaten just has a bigger silhouette because he's got all those extra decorations on him. He's got like his wings, he's got the big tail, he's got the little wings on the back of his hip. And for those who are wondering, yes, Rathalos is also instructions I have on my Patreon. He's a really, really great model. I will do a video on Rathalos soon. I want to get Rathian done as well. Moving on to posability. This guy actually has a lot of different movable parts. Like, even like the fur around his face can all be posed. The fur behind his ears can be posed. The fur behind his neck can be moved. When he goes to stand up, it's good to be able to have this fur posable so you can move it up and down to sort of cover up that back section. His mouth can open and close. He can do a little scream. The little feather fins on the back, they can pose. The tail, obviously, has multiple points of articulation. All the little fingers can be posed. The instructions version, as I said earlier, has even more posability. It's really easy to get him into the spinning top sort of look that he has. He will balance on his tail. This table that I have it on is sort of, it's like a softer table, so it's a little bit, yeah, he'll fall over, but on like a hard surface, he'll stand up just fine. I did not add any joints in the elbows and knees, and that's just because there's already so many little moving parts on him. Like even all of his fingers can be individually posed and rotated. It's just for the best that I cut down the amount of unnecessary joints, and I don't think that bending his elbows or knees are really necessary. His little wings can also be posed. The fur where he holds his fruit can be individually moved. So there's lots of little individual moving parts on him, and that does affect play a bit. I find, like, you could probably tell the amount of times I was like I was fixing his wings to make sure they were posed correctly, because there's so many moving parts. Playing with him is a little bit more difficult, and he doesn't really hold a position very well. I still think he's fun. I think he's flashy and he looks cool. It's not like my Brachydios model where it's like he will like keep his position and he'll just hold steady for you. The weakest part of this model, if we're going to talk about stability, is the back legs. They're attached to the middle joint here, and they kind of just fall off quite easily. If you're careful with them, it should be fine. But I feel like in play, everything else kind of just like shaking and rotating. Like, it's not breaking, but he sort of like loses his shape pretty quickly, as I said before. I think that there's the possibility of this model being fun for play and having, like, a kid could probably really enjoy it, but I think it's probably not as good as some of my other models when it comes to playability. So overall, I'm pretty satisfied with Bishaten, my build. Before we finish this video, I want to quickly give my thoughts on Bishaten as a monster. As I've said before, Bishaten is my favorite of the Rise newcomers. I'm always happy to get a new monkey monster, and I've always wanted to see Capcom make a monster based on the Tengu, because I think Tengu are cool. So I thought this was very cool all around, and I was very happy to see this. I was very happy also just to see how many of the Rise newcomers had genuine new skeletons, and thus they had genuine new attack patterns. The way Bishaten stands on his tail and then spins around like he's on a top is very fresh, and I was very happy to see this. Really, the only issue I have with this monster is simply an issue with Rise itself. The monsters in Rise are canonically outside of their natural habitat, which is why you, the hunter, are sent out to slay them. So it's different from Monster Hunter World, where every single monster was designed and chosen to fit in with those maps, so it feels like they belong there, and it's because they're actually their home. They match the locales you hunt them in. The monsters in Rise, they all kind of feel out of place. Like, they're all in the wrong spot. Like, they actually do feel like they're monsters attacking you, which is the point. But I feel like it clashes a bit with what Monster Hunter's, like, core message is. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if this was World, then we'd probably see Bishaten, you know, actually living in the treetops. We'd actually see him gliding from tree to tree. We'd actually see Bishaten harvest the fruit that he uses in his attacks, similar to how, like, you know, when you fight Baroth, you can see him lose the mud when you attack him, and then he gets his mud back by rolling in it. We don't really see Bishaten get his fruit back after he uses them all up. He sort of just has an unlimited supply of fruit. I would love to see Bishaten return in a future game where we can actually see him in his natural habitat doing his normal routines. Oh, yeah, and Blood Orange Bishaten. I think he's fine. He's fine. I have no qualms with it. I also feel like just Bishaten is just difficult to pose. Like, this entire video, I'm like, what's a good pose? And, like, he just looks weird. And he has so many moving parts and so many different... Whatever. That's the end of this one. Thank you all for watching. Special thanks to my patrons, as always. Thank you all for your support. Check out my Patreon for instructions, and there's more builds on the way. Speaking of more builds on the way, next one's special. That is not a good pose, but you can tell who this is, right? I don't need to say it. Like you should be able to tell, right? Right? Well, if the music doesn't give it away, I don't know what else will. Gormagala is next, and in October, I'm planning on doing a bunch of monsters that are, spooky, scary. I'm actually just going to tell you them right away, because I know a lot of you are always like, what's next? What's next? I'm just going to show you them right now. So after Gormagala, I'm going to do a double feature of Kezu and Giganox. I want to do them both in the same video. It'll be very, very fun, I think. Sort of like a double creepy monster sort of vid. When we get closer to Halloween, I want to update my Malzeno model. And we would also have Malzeno. So I'm hoping that this mix, we've got the shadowy demon dragon, we've got the vampire dragon, we've got the 2 creepy cave dragons. It'll be a good Halloween session for all of October. So I'm really eager and excited to have all 4 of these monsters done this month. And if I'm late on one of them, whatever. But yeah. Thank you all for watching. I'm going to see you next time with Gormagala. He's next. And I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you all for watching. Bye-bye.